Welcome to the November 16th meeting of the Granville Educated Village School District Board of Education. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Take the roll, please, Mike.
Dr. Corman.
Here.
Ms. Dees.
Here.
Mr. Janice.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Dr. Antella.
Here. Commendations.
Great.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see everybody here. Tonight we commend our GHS boys soccer team for supporting the Ronald McDonald House Charities of Central Ohio through a service project they created called Score One for Families in Need. With parental guidance, the organizers, Jacob Alexander, Clay Huber, Alex Libertini, Will Knock, and Jack Boyd, led a group of nearly 50 soccer team members on a workday, October 18th, at an extended stay home next to the Ronald McDonald House at Nationwide Children's Hospital in Columbus. In addition, the team organized a drive to collect household supplies and restock the shelves for this home away from home for parents of seriously ill children. The student organizers are here to accept this commendation for the team known as Lou's Crew, and that has special meaning that we all know about Louis Wood. So let's give them a round of applause for their community service, and come on up, gentlemen. And then we have some pictures to take behind. Congratulations. All right, I'm the shortest one, so I'll stand on the side.
Like
You
by
guys can
far.
stand in the middle. They're all going to try and hide. And paparazzi. Excellent. Just to elaborate on this a little bit, though, the board has really taken a look at fundraising efforts and service projects across the district. We do a lot of things, great things, in our community, but I think what the board really likes to see students doing is engaging in the project and actually going to the site and rolling up their sleeves and doing the work, because that's when you get the true experience of serving others. And having gone through personal loss of a person that struggled with illness, I can tell you that that's an invaluable support. So I think that hopefully you felt the feeling of just feeling good about supporting somebody else when you were there, and that continues as you leave K-12 and you go into college and into your careers in life. So congratulations, and we have a little sign over there that says, "What's your passion to serve?" We can all serve other people, and I think you guys did a great job of showing that as an example. So congratulations again, and we appreciate you doing that. So thank you. All right, next we get to congratulate our GHS field hockey coaches, Bobby Seidel and Tara Parsley, who were awarded the Central Ohio Field Hockey League Coaches of the Year honors by their peers. So I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but because I'm just be glowing about them. This could not go to two better people. These two coaches were fantastic this year for students on and off the field, and they are a great team. And the team's improvements were obvious, as evidenced by one of the league's coaches commenting Granville is a much improved team this year. There is a noticeable improvement in their athletes' stick skills and playing abilities. Granville's athletic director, Kevin Jarrett, attributed the success of the team to the time and dedication the coaches put in after a last-minute call to help when the coach that we hired originally going into the season resigned. And we are so grateful to them for being so willing to step up for the girls and doing such a great job. And I think, there's no greater recognition than the recognition of students and or peers. And I think it says something about these two young ladies and what they brought to the field. And having, as a parent of a player and as the superintendent, I couldn't be more proud and congratulate the both of you on this award. It's well deserved. Last night they did their banquet, and they talked about not just playing the sport, but all the things that you learn in the process of playing a sport: self-discipline, perseverance, grit, playing, potentially while hurt, hopefully not catastrophic injuries, but all those things add value to the experience of being in a public education system. You learn a lot of lessons in the classroom, but you learn a lot of lessons outside. And I think you've taught some great lessons to your team this year. And this is a shameless plug, but we have a need for lacrosse coaches. So, I'm just saying, we would love to have you in that sport as well. So, Tara and Bobby, come on up. Thank you.
Can we approve the lacrosse contracts now?
Yeah, if we want to approve lacrosse contracts right now, we can.
We are in negotiations with Mr. Garrett.
Okay, excellent. That's good to hear. Let me know how your agent.
Does he know that?
You can stay for the rest of the board meeting, but if you wish to leave at this time, you're not going to hurt anybody's feelings. Usually people pick up and run, but feel free to stay if you want. Thank you.
You're supposed to wait till after the report to let them go. Next time.
Yeah, next time. Yeah, sorry, you could have jumped in.
It's all right.
Next, I'd like to invite John Ball up to the podium for the student report. Simon had a PT session for his foot, and I believe he also has a choir thing tonight as well. So I think he's got a lot of things on his docket, but that brings John Ball to us to talk to us about youth and government.
Right, the last minute substitute is here. Don't worry. So right here, I just have some pamphlets that you guys can pass around. So my name is John Ball. Some of you guys might recognize me in my time intermittently throughout Granville in the past 17 years. I was actually at last month's school board meeting for the National Merit Commendation. And it's my honor tonight to talk to you guys about the Youth and Government program at Granville High School. And it's actually just been implemented into Granville Middle School. Over there you can see Mrs. Weaver. She is the high school advisor, and Charlie Myers. He is the state executive director for the program. So I started in this program my freshman year in high school because I loved politics. Whenever I saw anything pertaining to debate, whatnot, I knew I wanted to be involved. But with the YMCA Youth and Government program, I had no idea what that would consist of, but I went ahead and signed up. And so I joined the program, and I saw the seniors in leadership positions. I was terrified of them, but they were all fantastic. And in this program, it's now that I'm a senior at Granville High School, it's finally my turn to watch other students in the program grow in a manner that they can't achieve in a classroom setting when they get to experience this applied knowledge. And Granville High School, you can all be very proud, has had a fantastic performance in every year at the State Youth and Government Conference. So what the State Youth and Government Conference consists of is this year we'll have roughly 600 students going to the State House. In years past, my freshman year in high school, it was about 120 up to 400, then about 500, and this year hopefully 600. And what the students are doing is they're taking part mostly in a model legislative program. And so, say, if Mr. Miller and Mrs. Deeds, for example, want to write a bill replacing K through 6 recess time with differential equations at Denison, then you can write this bill and go through the realistic committee processes in the state legislature and get hands-on experience in the state legislative system. And then also you get the experience to run for legislative offices such as governor, chief justice, well, that one's not legislative, or Speaker of the House and President of the Senate. And last year, for example, Granville High School controlled every single one of those positions, which is pretty cool. So we had about 1/8 of the entirety of the statewide delegation, but we had Robbie Weaver as Speaker of the House, Arthur Leon as President of the Senate, Will Emery as Youth Governor, and I was Chief Justice last year. And Granville High School, we've expanded our membership from freshman year in high school, my freshman year, from about 35 members to this year we have about 110, roughly. So kids are really enjoying the program, and it's really exciting. And not only do kids get the experience to participate in the statewide conference, we also get to participate in many more activities, whether they are statewide or national. My favorite example was the governor's conference this summer. I was elected youth governor at last year's conference. And in Washington, D.C., we had our conference with youth governors from 38 other states. We represented a total of 58,000 kids nationally in the Youth and Government program. So it was a huge privilege. Imagine the peer group. It was absolutely fantastic. So I was not only next to and communicating with kids who have had a perfect score on every standardized test since the age of 3, speak 4 different languages. Not only was I talking to them, I was expected to be on their level, which was an immense challenge and a huge honor for me. And another opportunity that many students have participated in is the Mike DeWine Attorney General Teen Ambassador Board. So this year I was involved in the mental health advocacy group. And so what this does is it writes a policy initiative for the Attorney General, and at the end of our 1-year term, we'll present this policy initiative to senior Attorney General office staff, and they can consider if they would like to endorse it. So what my group is working on is introducing best practices for mental health facilities in schools across the state of Ohio. And also, just one more national program is the Conference on National Affairs. 700 kids go to the mountains of North Carolina to debate legislature. And the peer group, once again, is fantastic. And Granville High School kids this year will be sending several students, and it's absolutely given a wonderful world of knowledge for students to dive into. I started off, I knew that some groups in America experienced institutionalized disadvantages in the political system. But to be honest, my knowledge wasn't much more than that. I didn't understand, say, specific policy initiatives and how they could affect particular groups. And I didn't understand, most importantly, I didn't have an appreciation for people who had differing political viewpoints as myself. And this organization has created, I think, the best statewide organization in existence to deal with institutionalized intolerance towards other groups, and institutionalized cynical behavior towards really the government and in general. It's giving students more applied knowledge, and it's empowering them to hopefully one day run for political office. So that's a bit about youth and government. Thank you so much for listening.
John. Thank you.
I want to give the board an opportunity to ask you any questions. First of all, great synopsis and summary. Well done. Mike, Mr. Sobel and I deal with the General Assembly quite often, and I wish they would go through the model process themselves. They seem to have forgotten that there is a process and that most stuff happens in conference committee now. Behind closed doors. So I think it might be good to actually give them a tutorial at some point. Yeah. So maybe how a bill becomes a law 101 for our General Assembly.
Okay.
That would be great.
I can
Think
sing
about
the song.
Yes. Yeah. You've heard it. You've heard it. Yes. So,
Great.
board members, do you have any questions or thoughts, comments?
How many members are in the high school youth and government?
This year, so we've just started off this year for, as far as registration goes. Right now, we're at approximately 100 to 110, with the statewide conference consisting of about 650 students.
It's fantastic.
Fantastic.
How do you go about choosing what bill you're going to push for in a particular year?
A very good question. So a lot of students decide to go with what they're most familiar with. So we receive definitely the most bills on education policy or driver's ed. And other students will definitely try their hand at, say, tax reform, Social Security reform in the state of Ohio, agricultural reform. There will be a few on drone strikes in the Middle East, which is unique.
Any about
It's just state law.
Any about the state bird?
Oh, yes, this year, one Granville student is very passionately trying to change the state bird to the ostrich. Don't worry. So you're in good hands.
That happens to be...
That happens to be my son.
Yeah.
And his friend Sullivan. The two of them are working on it together.
Oh. Well, personally, I think it's a fantastic.
You didn't see that already?
Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's great.
Yeah. So, thank you very much. Does anybody have any other questions? Yes.
Thank you.
That was
Very
great.
impressive.
That's great.
Thanks.
Well, Mr. Bernath, I don't know how you follow that,
Yeah,
but
thanks.
yeah. Good luck talking about state data.
Oh, yeah. Everybody's on the edge of their seats.
Yeah.
Just give me 1 second to get set up.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
That's good, John.
You know, it is interesting.
So too many have the card.
You know,
It's really
people
cool.
get so positional now that they don't listen and, you
Yeah.
know, look at other different
Yeah.
perspectives. And I think when kids have the ability to have that experience early, really matters.
You felt like it was too many states. He and Sullivan felt like it was too many states had the cardinal.
That's really good.
Ohio. Oh, yeah, right.
Okay, yeah, so in the future, we'll need to make sure this goes first before that. It's interesting, he was talking about 110 kids. I think the first year we had that, 5 or 6 years ago, there were 13 students that were starting in that program, so it's increased exponentially, and Lori does a great job with that. So now we have the middle school as well, so that's great. Well, you've been waiting 6 months for this presentation. We finally have a little bit of state testing data from the park and air tests that our students took last year. I'll preface all of this with, this is our own in-house calculations. We have not gotten anything specific from the state. We frankly don't know when that's going to happen, although it should be relatively soon, hopefully next week, but that is not set in stone yet. So we've done our own internal calculations, and we'll make sure to point out some things that we're looking at as we go through this data. Please ask any questions at any point as we go through this. The first thing is I want to give just a very quick overview of what state testing was like last year, although we tried to forget it as quickly as possible. We had the park test last year. That was math and English language arts. grades 4 through 9. I remember 3rd grade, they still took the old OAA reading test, paper and pencil version. So that's why 3rd grade's not included in there. In math, it was grades 4 through 8 plus Algebra 1 and geometry at the high school level. Those were for freshmen only. So Algebra 1 or geometry, well, we didn't have any Algebra 1 students that weren't freshmen, but geometry students who were above freshmen took a different assessment that we've done for years through ACT. So it was just the freshmen that took the geometry test. There were 2 sections to the PARCC test, the PBA, which started in February and ended in March, and then the end of year assessment, which was in April and May. The score scale for this is a little different if you're familiar with AP scoring, very similar format. 5 is the highest score, down to 1 and being the lowest, and a 3 or greater is now considered proficient. So gone are the days of accelerated and advanced and proficient and those different monikers for the different scores. We have a scale score of 1 through 5 now for both tests. We also had the AIR tests in science and social studies. So we had 2 different vendors last year. You will see that will change for this year, which is a really good change as far as we're concerned. Science took only the grades 5 and 8 tests, plus they took physical science at the high school. Social studies was grades 4 and 6, plus U.S. history and government. Now there was one unique little situation here. Because of previous legislation, any student in U.S. history and government, regardless of their grade, had to take that end of course exam. So we had juniors and seniors taking the government test last year, even though it meant absolutely nothing towards graduation for them, and they knew it. They just had to take the test, and they did a great job with it, as our kids always do. But it really meant nothing for them. It was only a graduation requirement for the current 9th grade or current 10th graders, last year's 9th graders. This again had 2 sections, very similar to the PARCC testing. One portion of the PBA given in March and April, and the end of year assessment given in April and May. And again, a scale score of 1, 2, 5, with 3 or better being proficient. So that's a quick rundown of what that testing was like. So the results for this, and these are our calculations. One of the things that we had in last year's testing data was we had students that either started testing and decided to not complete it, or opted out of testing completely. So for a lot of students, about 100 subject tests total, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, we don't have test scores for those particular students. So the numbers that you see here, the ones in blue are Granville scores. This is the percentage of our students at each level that that scored a 3 or better on the test, or were proficient or better, out of the students that completed all portions of the tests. So we have taken out the students who did not complete testing, which wasn't very many. If they started it, they normally completed it. And the students that we don't have a test score will count against us from the state perspective. We're just not sure how that's going to look yet. So we've taken them out of our calculations. For the students that we have scores for, this is the students that were a 3 or better. Those numbers are very similar to past years. A few things I would point out from an English language arts perspective. First of all, as you go from the younger grades to the lower grades, you see a general increase in the passing percentage. That's not necessarily the case with the state proficient percentage as well. So it's not like the test gets easier as you go up, although the 9th grade test, at least on paper, does seem to be easier than the rest of them in terms of the number of students that were proficient or better. So we see a little growth over time as we go up each grade level. The other thing is, looking over here, this is the percentage of students that scored a 4 or 5. So that's the old accelerated or advanced label that we would have. And by the time they were 9th grade, we had 85% of 9th graders last year scoring advanced or accelerated, with the state average being about 45%. And again, that number seems to increase in general as you go down the line through each grade level. And I think that's an important trend to see, that our kids are performing better. I know these are one-day tests and one assessments, and it was the PARCC test, and there's a whole lot of other baggage that came with those particular tests. But it is a trend that we would want to see our students as they come into our district over time. These numbers here in the middle are just the numbers of students that got 5s, 4s, 3s, 2s, and 1s, where these percentages came from. So that's the English language arts results. For math, very similar in terms of some of the trajectory trends that we see. We start off in 3rd and 4th grade here in the 80s percentiles, and then by the time they get to geometry, we have 100%. Now, we should celebrate that. To get 100% of your kids reaching that goal is phenomenal, but you have to remember this is just ninth graders taking this test. So a ninth grader in geometry is our accelerated population. Those students are our best math students in our school district. So we should see scores like that. And if you look at the state average, 89% of all students in ninth grade who took geometry were proficient or better. So it's a little misleading. You have to look at some of the numbers behind the numbers sometimes to really get a sense of things. I'll point out another example of that. If you look at Math 7, that was 87%. And you know, we're trending up, we're trending up. We hit 97% in sixth grade, and then we drop to 87%, and then we go right back up. Well, a lot of our students, almost half of every single grade, skips Math 7. They go from accelerated Math 6 in the intermediate school to Math 8, which is pre-algebra, as seventh graders. So we have half of our population not even taking this Math 7 test. And if you look at the numbers here, you know, if you add those up, 44, 77, about 89 students took the Math 7 test. Where the Math 8 test, you have well over 200 students taking that particular test. So you have to look at the end size as much as just the actual percentage that's there well and understand where we accelerate students and why we accelerate them. Why we're talking about acceleration, I think it's important to look at, you know, these are students that are accelerated in 8th grade, these are students that are accelerated in 9th grade, these are students that are accelerated in 7th grade, and our scores are very high, that we're identifying the right kids to accelerate and they're being successful on an assessment that we don't create, an assessment that's from an independent contractor. Again, the percentage of scoring 4 or 5 will vary. You see that little dip in Math 7, but that increase in Math 8 because a lot of those students skip that. But again, very good results for the most part across the board. Any questions so far? All right, science and social studies. Again, this was AIR, not PARC, and AIR will be around this year. These are our science results and our social studies results, very similar to previous ones. I'd point out government, you know, we had juniors and seniors that meant nothing for, and they still 93% got a 3 or better. So we appreciate them taking it semi-seriously when it meant absolutely nothing, and they certainly knew that. They walked into that test completely aware of how that would impact them, which was in no way, shape, or form. The physical science number you'll notice is a little bit lower. You say, gosh, that's 76%. That's so much lower than everything else. We only have 17 students in physical science at the high school level. Physical science is a course that's taught alongside of a double period of Algebra 1 for students who need some extra support in algebra and science coming into high school. So they walk out of their freshman year still in Algebra 1, but they get 2 periods of math a day. Plus the physical science, which reinforces from a hands-on and practical application a lot of those algebra concepts to make math a little more tangible for those students. An average student would be in geometry and biology as a freshman. So you have to look at the end size again. You're thinking we only have 17 students in that particular cohort, but we still outperform the state average with those 17 students.
Ryan, and that was a real byproduct of the graduation requirements and the shift. And I know that once the Algebra 2 became that threshold for graduation, we did a lot of redesign to provide more support for students that needed that support to get to that minimum threshold.
So, you know, talking about that just a little bit off topic, you have students that walk into high school, and we identified these 17 students based on a lot of things. Conversations with the middle school teachers and counselors and Lisa, conversations with their parents, data, raw data, test scores, and just how they're doing in math. Those students get a double dip of math is what we call it. In Algebra 1, they take physical science. Their sophomore year, they're put into a very support-driven geometry class. So they are hand-scheduled into that particular class. There's no computer that just says, oh, you're going to have geometry 7th period. They're put in a specific class with extra support. And then their junior year, they take Algebra 2 alongside a physics course. So that the Algebra 2 concepts are combined with the physics. So those students are walking into 3 years of real solid mathematics. Then they have the choice. Some students go on to pre-calculus from that point. They came into high school struggling with Algebra 1 and they're walking out with pre-calculus, or they can take statistics. So they have a couple different options when they're seniors. Not much more else that I want to point out in this except the scores were very similar. Again, you see an increase as we go from Science 5 to Science 8. And then same thing with social studies, starting with social studies 4, going up to U.S. history and government. So the analysis of all this data is if we take the students that actually took all the tests and do a PI score, which we're very familiar with getting every year, our PI score this year would be 108.9, which is actually better than it was the previous year as a district. So for all the pageantry around how much more difficult these tests were, and they were more difficult, there's no doubt about that. The cut scores from the state, that's a whole other conversation. We're a little bit lower than we thought they were going to be. But our students, our performance index would have been a 108.9. This will not be our state reported performance index. This is just our generated one from the students who actually finished the testing. So let me give you an example of where we're coming from with this. Any student that doesn't take a test counts as a 0. They don't get excluded from the data for performance index. They actually count as one test with a score of 0. So we had last year, actually when I say last year I mean 13-14, we had 2 subject tests. So think of all the testing we did in the entire district. We only had 2 subjects of the OGT that students didn't complete in the entire district. This last year we had almost 100. So that'll drop our PI a few points potentially when it comes out. We're guesstimating right around 106. We're just not sure about how the state's going to take all those students into that particular calculation, whether CTEC students count, whether students who are not in our district but are our students but go to other schools, how they will count against us. So there's a lot of ambiguity in terms of how this performance index score is going to be calculated. But if you just take how we did, and for our students who were in our district who took all the tests, it was 108.9, and we're pretty happy about that.
We've advocated to several of the representatives to create an opt-out in Senate Bill 3 as it is revisited for districts to be held harmless on the performance index. And obviously that doesn't necessarily impact us, but there are a lot of school districts that are going on the ballot and they don't want to have a performance index that has dropped significantly as any sign of potential poor performance and have a negative levy reaction because of that. So we're trying to, they've given safe harbor to teachers, to students. I think they should do it for the districts as well. So just an FYI.
At the OSBA conference, I was in one particular session, and there was a lot of, I would say, heated discussion about this from superintendents around the state and districts just like ours, that we're proud of our performance index scores all these years, and it's something that it's not everything we do, but it is one measure of how good that we do, how well we do as a district. So that remains to be seen, and we'll see what happens with that. Just to finally kind of wrap up, what's next? What does testing look like this year? Frankly, anything's better than it was last year, and it's significantly better. First of all, we have a single vendor. AIR will give the English language arts, math, science, and social studies tests. It's an Ohio-specific test, so this is not a national test like Park was. It's Ohio-specific based on Ohio standards. You will not see this test given in other states. I think that's an important piece for the community to understand that we have designed this test in Ohio. Now, I might use one question that Florida is using and 2 questions that West Virginia is using, and a mix and match of different things, but it's our test, and we've created it with the help of AIR. The biggest part is the significant reductions in testing time. There's one testing window, 3 weeks in the last week of April and the first 2 weeks of May. All the testing will be done for all grade levels during that time. It coincides with AP testing at the high school level. It's at the end of the school year. I think we have 6 school days after testing is over. So it really, truly is an end-of-year assessment, which we have advocated hard for along with a lot of districts. And we'll actually get the data by June 30th. So we'll get it almost 6 weeks after, less than 6 weeks after we're finished testing instead of 6 months as it is now. And then Jeff talked about the safe harbor piece, that you can't use this for decisions on promotion or retention this year, and staff has the protection through a memorandum of understanding we did with GEA earlier this year in their value-added data. So with all that, much better picture in terms of testing this year, which is really what I would like to focus on, not so much the results from the previous year, because I'm not sure how much really good data we can get from them. Any questions?
Will there be any difference this year from last in terms of opting out of the test? Do you expect to have a similar pushback?
I think there's 2 important pieces of this. One is it's not a national test. I think that was an aggregating factor in terms of people opting out, that it was almost a central government-driven initiative. And number two is just the amount of testing time. When we started testing in February of last year, and it seemed like it was pretty much every day until the end of the school year. So the vast reduction, the logical place to do that testing at the end of the year, along with an Ohio-specific test, I think will ease the concerns that a lot of people that we talked with last year who opted out.
We met with just about every single parent that opted out, and I would say that this addressed 95% of those concerns.
Okay.
I think I got a lot of parent feedback that the kids felt a lot of stress about it last year, and I think it was a little bit political undertones about the whole testing thing and just kind of what hit the media and so forth. And I think it was challenging for all of our community members and our students and our staff to all kind of figure out all these different tests and the timing of them and so forth. So I'm hopeful that we're through that, right? And it won't be so much of an issue, but it's something I think that we need to continue to counsel staff on specifically, right? That this is not something to add stress to them or their kids, right? It's an important metric, right? But something important we have to do, but not something that needs to come home in a lot of stress.
Absolutely. I'll give you a little quote from today. I omitted earlier. Today we had to do a practice run through we did it with 6th grade and high school students to make sure our technology is going to work at the end of the year. So it was like a 20-minute practice session where they logged in, they saw the format of the test, and they logged out and class went on. So this was an exact quote from a 6th grader today. This is so much better than last year. And then he was just looking at one question, and just in terms of how it was phrased, the format of the testing, he was just very appreciative of how much better it seemed to be just in the setup of it and the ease of use than compared to last year. And I think that was a really good positive sign, unsolicited. We were just trying to test to make sure our computers worked for the process. So
I think moving forward, the board is going to be challenged to take a look at this new data structure that will evolve over the next 3 years, look at what we're doing with project-based learning over the next 3 to 5 years, and really talk about what type of internal metrics do we want to be looking at as an aggregate board to say, are we on the right track or not? And we started 5 years ago with board benchmarks, and they drove a lot of the continuous improvement that took place during that time. We have a chance to revisit that now once we have the stable assessment system in place, and I think that's an exciting opportunity to look at not only just the students that do well on standardized assessments, but students that do well in the soft skills, in the presentation skills, in the ability to work with others on significant projects. All of those things go into, I think, the complete picture of what Granville Schools offers. So keep that in the back of your mind, because it's a future conversation that we'll have. Yep.
thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Thanks, Ron.
Tanya Sherburne is going to come up and give us a brief update on our facility study that we did at the end of last year. All of you should have had the report in a previous, I think I passed them out at the previous meeting, so she's going to reference that.
So earlier I asked Jeff if I could present before Ryan. But I'm glad that I didn't. Because that student was very impressive. So now I just have to follow up Ryan. Right now it's not showing right here. We've been having some technological difficulties.
No, I would think probably just fill out. For now.
I think that's okay. We can start with slide 2.
Okay,
We'll just start with slide 2. But truly, it is timely that I'm presenting after Ryan because the facility study does have information in it that provides a safe and environment for student learning, which will help support the schools with their academic achievement. We certainly don't want students to be hot in their classrooms while they're testing or uncomfortable in any way or to not arrive safely to school. So the purpose of the study was to assess the district facilities in order to gain a perspective on the cost to maintain the district's assets over the next 20 years. Jeff did allude to the report that you received last week, and we are not going to go into that much detail as we go through this presentation, but the specifics are in that if you would like to ask further questions. Information can be used to assist in formulating strategy for the funding of these permanent improvement necessities. The process that we use is I had an initial meeting with Jeff Gordon to discuss the scope of the study. And then when I say Jeff here, I don't mean Jeff Brown, I mean Jeff Gordon. Then met with Frank and Marie Krieger to conduct a complete inventory of the district structures, grounds, and equipment. That took approximately 4 months. It is quite a substantial undertaking, which Jeff Gordon did assure me that that is about the average time length for something like that to occur. It just takes a significant amount of time to gather all of that information. It's typically not readily available within school districts. So the information then was analyzed for life expectancy and the replacement cost. Life cycle and replacement costs were gathered from the Ohio School Facilities Assessment Guidelines, vendor quotes, state term pricing contracts on the online pricing information. The replacement cost projections are in today's dollars, so we needed to adjust them for inflation for the next 20 years. We did not include 3 areas in the study: the athletic facilities, because we also had an athletic facility study running along the same time frame, and then classroom furniture and our custodial equipment. The custodial equipment is, much of it is supplied through EMS, which is who we contract with for our cleaning. So the alignment, whoops, I missed a slide. Oh no. Ryan, it was my favorite slide.
She'll get it back.
Well, okay. So the slide that you cannot see right now basically lists all of the costs. Go up to slide number 2. There you go. Of the 20-year total. And so you can see that collectively it's just a little over $17 million, and the building mechanicals is $6,000, I wish, $6 million of that cost, which is pretty significant. The annual estimated expenditures is right around $1 million. The 2015 dollars, you can see again, it's just a little over 17 million, but with a 2.3 annual increase for inflation, it's estimated at 21 million, a little over 21 million.
And that's just to maintain.
Yes, that's just to maintain what we currently have. That's correct. We are currently putting together the final stages of putting together a House Bill 264 project, which aligns with the building mechanicals. That I said was around $6 million. We should be getting the RFQ out within, I would say, the next 2 to 3 weeks. And the project focuses on lighting upgrades as well as the major HVAC projects. We'll be replacing a hot water boiler system in 2 of our buildings. The VFDs on multiple pumps, multiple HVAC unit replacements will also occur. And the money that we save from the energy conservation measures will make the payment on the debt services through the House Bill 264 project. So we're hoping that that will help us in the larger picture.
Can you remind me what House Bill 264 is?
Mike, do you want to talk?
Sure. House Bill 64 is a provision in law that allows the district to issue bonds for, they don't go to non-voted bonds to undertake energy conservation investment. And then presumably lower the cost of energy, and so that is what's then used to pay the debt service on the bonds.
In the past efforts on our House Bill 264, and it's been like 8 years or something like that probably, we had a significant community contingent looking through things and so forth. Does that come later in the process, or is that not needed with these kinds of things, or what's your sense? So we had a big community group of people that were experts in things like building maintenance and so forth come together and review the HB 264 proposal? Is that potentially planned?
They've been in the process with the operations committee. We have discussed the project with them, and they've had feedback and input on it, yes.
Okay, great.
I think it's important to recognize, one, this is an area that is obviously critical, but we want to do it in a way that we can spend the least amount of money doing that so that we can spend the most amount of money in the classroom doing what our mission says we should be doing. But I think if you ignore the facilities too long, then you're into catastrophic costs that escalate exponentially. And so we wanted to put together a 20-year plan so that we could say, okay, what are the permanent improvement dollars coming in? What are they going to be allocated for? Let's target those projects and really be intentional about the approach that we take so that we don't get into a we're behind the 8-ball situation. And I think this is a great first step. And we're already starting to see some of the things that would have been on that list in year one start to surface. But I think the House Bill 264 project we have our last payment in 2018?
For the current one.
For the
yes.
current one in 2018, so that will sunset that project list. Although all of those things have been done, we're just paying off the debt. And this is a great opportunity for, again, HVAC and LED lighting is really a cost saver when you look at large facilities and converting their lighting system and the energy efficiency from that. I had a conversation with John Gordon from Englefield Oil. They put an LED system in for $50,000 and the return on the investment was less than 6 months. So, I mean, it's a pretty strong turnaround. We're excited about getting into some of this work and really approaching it from a strategic perspective. I appreciate Tanya's guidance on this and the work of the Resources and Operations Committee in reviewing the details.
Just another question about,
Go
is
ahead.
it a competitive process, or anybody can do it when they're ready and it gets automatically approved? You know what I mean? It's not like a grant.
You mean
The
the-
House Bill
the House Bill,
264.
okay. Yeah.
Basically, we have to file a project proposal with the Ohio School Facilities Commission or whatever I can't remember what they're called
Yeah.
now. And basically, they have to certify that, yes, we have reasonably done an estimate of the savings from the project, and we can justify that the savings will be sufficient to pay off the debt within, I know there's a fixed number of years, but is it 10, 15? I don't remember
I
the
think it's
exact.
10.
Yeah.
The exact number of
Okay.
years. But no, there's no, we just have to prove that it's a sustainable
Okay.
project. There's no state dollars involved in it. Basically, once we get the approval from the state to proceed, and we have an RFQ in place and have bids, then we will issue the notes
Okay.
through, and actually, the same way we did last time. Last time, Park took all the notes.
Okay.
And I've already talked with them, and they are willing to do that again this time, where they will just place all the notes, so we don't have to go through a more substantial bonding process.
From what account is that debt service repaid on a regular basis? Where does that come out of or hit our, What statement is that in?
It comes out of the debt fund, but if you take a look at the 5-year forecast, if you look at the detailed 5-year forecast right now, you'll see down towards the bottom in the other sources and uses of money, you'll see a $239,740 expenditure for the next 3 years.
Could you be more specific?
I've had to deal with that number so long. It's sort of etched in my mind.
Yeah.
But you'll see that in the 5-year forecast, and that's just reflecting the ongoing cost savings from implementing the project. So it actually is, it comes out of our operating budget.
not a permanent improvement budget?
Technically, we pay it out of the bond fund, because it is debt, but it is essentially funded by the savings from the projects.
I think the other thing to note is at the beginning of this year, we were very intentional, middle of last year and beginning of this year, in the energy conservation guidelines, and really
looking at what's in a room. And I have to say, to the staff's credit, they really were, they followed the guidelines, and they removed a lot of the things that are energy drains. And I think we'll see some tangible benefits from that as well. So I think there have been a lot of good things happening in the world of operations, facilities management, and that's a good thing.
In the past, there was a company, Go Sustainable, involved in looking?
Yes.
Are they?
We're still working closely with them.
They're part of this process and giving you
Yes.
some feedback and things like that?
Yes, they are.
They did a great job of cutting through a lot of stuff to really understand the true impact that we would have and making good recommendations on prioritization. So that's nice to have them
Yes.
on our side.
Okay, thank you, Tanya. All right. Board discussion. Dr. Corman, I would suggest that Mr. Sobel's kind of frame the conversation around the Newark TIF agreement, and then we'll jump in.
Sounds good.
Okay?
The city of Newark came to us initially several months ago, and then again several weeks ago, to pursue the idea of doing a tax increment financing project with the apartment buildings that are being developed along River Road. The idea being they would capture part of the money, and that would be used primarily to maintain River Road. And, yeah, the additional traffic that is going to be driven by the apartments and those additional units. Initially, they had talked about doing it in a way that did not need the board approval, which would have been a 75% abatement for up to 10 years and would have required no compensation to the district, and we would have been out all of that money. But one of the things they wanted is they wanted this in place by the end of this calendar year, and really needed in place by the end of this calendar year. And there's a 45-day notification process that is required if they're doing that. And they were really, they got to this so late, they were kind of outside of the inside of the 45 days. And so we came back to that, and they were going to ask us to waive the 45-day requirement, which we will see on the agenda later on in the action portion of the agenda. We came back and said we would only be willing to waive the 45 days if we were fully compensated. They came back with a 100% 30-year TIF, and under that type of arrangement, there is a full hold harmless required to both us and to CTEC as part of that. Once they went that route, we said, okay, that is beneficial really to everybody. They get the money they need to maintain the road. We get our full benefits of revenue as if it was taxes, and we get the added benefit that the valuation does not go on to our books, which means it does not make us richer in the eyes of the state funding formula as that value comes on, which of course helps us then with the state aid calculations down the road. So after some going around, we have worked out all the details of that. You have in your packets, you have both the resolution that we'll be voting on later and also the compensation agreement that shows the 100% 30 years. That will take effect January 1 of 2016. What that will mean is the valuation, there's 3 parcels involved. There's a phase 1 and a phase 2 of the project. The 2015 valuation will become the base of the project. And that will be the land values plus, and I was actually going around even at about 4:30 this afternoon on this last part. The developers have done about $600,000 of land improvements that were actually done prior to January 1st of this year, primarily sewer work and road work. That will become part of the base because the agreement basically can't be implemented retroactively. And so This year, the improvements and the apartments that have gone up during this year, there are some now being occupied. Those, of course, will have a 1/1/16 lien date on them. That's when they go on the books. And so the additional valuation that goes on from that project above the 15 base is the valuation that will go into the TIF. They will make a payment to us and to CTEC equal to our tax rate times that incremental increase in value. And then the rest of the tax money will be captured into the TIF fund, which they are not planning to issue debt against, but will use that money to maintain River Road and paving and structure for the road. And I think potentially, depending on the development and depending on what happens with the Cherry Valley Road interchange, at some point there may be some movement to extend River Road up to Cherry Valley. Right? Not
Well,
right?
it would be,
Or no?
it would be Cherry Valley would be the Thornwood connection down to
Okay.
70. So they're thinking about creating like another 37, but making it Thornwood all the way down to 70, so that there's another access point to 70.
So that's really the proposal and the project in a nutshell.
What's the overall magnitude of the project, or how much is it gonna be covering?
It's probably ending up anywhere from $9 to $12 million. Once both phases of the apartment development is concluded. The first phase, which you're working on right now, I believe is 69 units, somewhere in there. And then the second phase, I think, is another 35 or so, 40.
Yeah.
And I think there's supposed to be like 113
That's what I read.
units, give or take, when the whole project is done, which I think they're looking at maybe by the end of 2017 for it to be fully built out.
And these are 1 and 2 bedroom.
They're all
They're
I
all
believe they
two-bedroom.
are all two-bedroom ranch condos,
Okay.
or apartments, rather.
One of the bedrooms can be a den in the single bedroom.
Right, so there's different
Format,
plans,
yeah.
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 There was, I actually read these, and there was one question I had that, about, like, they were only gonna pay us from a particular fund. I guess that's the fund that the
The TIF
reimbursement
fund.
that goes into?
Yes.
No risk of it ever not having enough to pay us?
No, because what goes into the TIF fund is essentially you take the total tax rate that's in the, applied across all jurisdictions, and that's what goes into the TIF fund, and they pay out of that, they pay us, roughly 80% of that, which is the school share.
Okay.
CTEC is another few percent, and then the remainder stays credited to the fund to do the.
Okay. I'm just
Yeah.
curious why they had to stipulate that. Is that there for their own
The mon-
protection? or-
Because no, that's part of the legislation. The money
Oh,
has to be
okay.
paid into a TIF fund.
Oh, okay.
The city has to deposit the money into the TIF fund
Okay.
to spend out of. That's actually in statute.
Okay. I also had noticed that CTEC is on the agreement,
Yes.
so is it not really, until they sign it as well, does it not take?
Well,
effect, or-
it's not gonna, it actually, we are both us and CTEC are acting before the Newark City Council is. we
Okay,
have-
oh, because they're on the 7th
We
of
have action
December.
tonight, I believe CTEC, you will
Wednesday.
have that Wednesday night.
Wednesday.
I believe it's scheduled for action at Newark City Council on
Okay.
December 7th.
Okay,
So they will take the final, basically, they have to take the final action, they have to do it prior to January 1 to be able to capture the value of what is being built, has been built this year so far.
And just so you're aware, you're not, in the future action item, you're not voting to approve the actual document, you're just approving the waiving of the 45-day
Yeah.
notification.
Because it actually does not require our approval because because the structure they're using requires 100% payment to the school district. If they're giving you 100%, the school district is not actually required to approve the compensation agreement itself.
But we're waiving it conditional upon this agreement.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, we are waiving this is.
I mean, we're voting to waive, sorry.
We're
Yeah.
right, we're voting to waive the 45-day reporting requirement and to essentially approve the compensation
Right.
agreement that they have laid out to us.
Right. No, I mean, they can't turn around and say, we waive it, and then turn around and say,
Yeah.
sorry.
Not
Okay.
this year.
They
Not
could,
this
but
year.
they would be in
In a
a
whole lot of
battle.
trouble? Okay.
Any other
It's
conversations?
a good result.
Yeah.
And thanks to both of you for the fact that you have worked
Catching it.
hard to keep open lines of communication with your cohorts at Newark, and that when the issue first came up, you made very clear what our position would be. And I thank them for being responsive to that.
Thank you.
It protects certainly our citizens and our students. Good result.
Yeah. Once again, it is very, very beneficial to have Mike Sobel sitting. And when they talk taxation, I go,
This is,
very nice.
this is basically because this is a for-profit property, right? So if, for
Considered a
example, some of those other properties that are eventually going to be developed, if they're residential homes, this is a totally different ball of wax.
It's a different kind.
Right.
It's not that it's private, this is what's called a project TIF, and that it's tied to a single commercial project and is only affecting those parcels. You can do what's called an area, these called area-wide TIFs, which can be, I mean, I've seen these things cover half of a city or something. And those can be used for developing either business or residential.
Okay.
There's a lot of different rules that go with those. It's a different type of animal. This is the more, lack of a better word, traditional TIF type arrangement that has been around now probably 30 years at least, that this type of arrangement can be done. The area TIFs, those only go back now, I think about 10 years, middle of the last decade when those were created.
And legal counsel, our legal counsel is looking.
Our legal counsel has, yes, we have, as a matter of fact, he was one of the ones that was on the phone with about 4:30 this afternoon clarifying stuff. But yeah, he went through all the language of the TIF. He recommended changes. We sent them to City of Newark's attorney. He was City of Newark, their attorney was fine with the changes that Caleb recommended. And we went, and so it reflects basically what Caleb thought we should have in there.
Any other questions? Moving on.
Right, one-to-one. So I'm going to go back a little bit to the beginning of the school year when we prioritized Schoology as a learning management system in Granville schools. I have to give the teachers and the principals and the staff a lot of credit for really making that shift quite seamless in moving away from My Big Campus to Schoology. But it was a very intentional move to a learning management system that we thought would be scalable and that would be beneficial long-term for our students. And now as we populate content, it is becoming even more critical that we have consistency of access to that information. So we've been starting conversations around one-to-one. Specifically at 9-12, and I'm going to frame that a little bit because that's not necessarily what we would like to do, but what we're trying to orient towards. One-to-one is the district providing a technology device for every student that is in that grade level band. We are currently drafting a straight A fund grant proposal that is a hybrid of blending and integration of project-based learning, global studies, and one-to-one into a straight A grant proposal. We're right now, the title of that is Take Action. The integration of one-to-one project-based learning and global studies. So how does this all fit in? First of all, straight A fund grant was originally conceived with $250 million in the pot. In year one, it went down to, in year two, $150 million statewide in a competitive grant application process. And in year three, it is now $15 million. So you can see that the money that has gone into the straight A fund grant bucket is significantly less, so it's getting even more and more competitive from a grant perspective. We have written a similar grant for the last 3 years. We wrote almost an identical grant to Chagrin Falls. I was at the OSBA conference last week, heard them present, and I thought we could have literally laid one next to the other, and they chose to fund Chagrin Falls and not us. Not that I'm bitter, but I am. So we went at it from a different approach this time, really linking it to what came out of the innovation process with project-based learning. Because if you look at what is necessary for project-based learning, it is a more flexible resource tool. And obviously a computer, a Chromebook, whatever device you're using, you have access to broader content now than you ever had from a textbook perspective. So we are entertaining that shift. We are moving more towards that shift of being one-to-one. Would we like to move it down further? Absolutely. We think that as low as 3rd or 4th grade, that could be a successful model. But we also have to look at what are the requirements of the grant, what's sustainable. You know, when we talked about facility study, you're talking about the actual infrastructure of the facilities, but we also spend money on devices as well. So all that has to be built into a sustainability metric for this grant to be approved, even if it's deemed sustainable. So we are moving in that direction. My hope is that we get this seed money of about a little less than $500,000 to provide that catalyst to move in this direction, and we find a way to sustain that through our current allocation within the Permanent Improvement Fund. But I just wanted to have a conversation about this because I want to start talking a little bit more intentionally with the staff about this shift. You know, I've had conversations with Mr. Stewart, and he said yes yesterday, if that's an accurate depiction. But I think we are in that just right tipping point moment where the necessity for the device is there. And we think it will really add value to what our students experience when they're moving into that project-based learning experience. You know, Thomas showed me a video of the Lego robotics group. You know, that's the type of work that they can do when they have a device and they're making their public product presentations, or they're taking action to create a land lab, or to, you know, clean up a toxic waste site, or to, you know, develop a composting system. It just is the time that we stop or maybe we stop spending money on textbooks and fixed assets that are stagnant, and we start getting more into a more flexible environment. So that's the start of the conversation, and the rest of the story is yours.
I'd like to start by saying fantastic. Thank you very much for bringing this to us. I think it's really critical that our students are prepared with technology. You know, we've been frugal with technology as best we can, but I think we are like at a turning point right now, and I think the synergy of how it happens with project-based learning, and so we get started with that educational model with the tools that we need are really critical. I've talked to some people that have implemented other school districts and people in the industry, and they said, you know, you don't just throw technology at it and think the problem's going to be fixed, right? If you're not ready for it, if you don't have the learning management system yet, if you don't have the pedagogical foundations of being able to use these things, it's a waste of money, right? So I think actually, had we gone through with it a couple of years ago, with the non-functional, learning management system, it would have been kind of a disaster, right? And I think it's great to hear that the staff is clamoring for it, right? Because the kinds of things that you can do, putting so many things electronically to reduce paper in the backpacks and textbooks and those kinds of things, I think it's really essential, right? So I think it's a fantastic start. I'd like to see us, explore what happens at the lower grades. It's probably not the same time. We need to phase it in, but maybe, other districts have done tablets in the middle school, that they keep for 3 years, and then laptops at the high school, or some more cost-effective way to roll into that as we retire other computers, right? Maybe there's a way to replace them with a one-to-one methodology as opposed to classroom sets or labs or things like that. So I think it's about time.
A lot of the successful models that I've seen at the K2 level, they are more tablet-oriented, either iPad or tablet. And that is the precursor to them getting a device in 3rd grade or 4th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to build their skill sets adequately to make that transition pretty well.
Yeah.
But, I think we need to look at that in aggregate.
Mhm.
And I think that if we had endless funds, we could do it tomorrow. But I think you're right. If we had been successful in the grant piece, we would have had to be very intentional about how we would roll it out. I think we've done it right with the implementation of Schoology and building the staff's competency to use that tool and then give them the devices and the students the devices to really have the impact. Thank you.
Two questions. One would be, off and on our discussion turns toward finding sponsors, development type venues where we're looking to get funding for specific things. This seems like it would be another piece, particularly with the shrinking fund that you're looking at, competing for the grant for. So I would encourage you to pursue that also, because this particular area, once you're in, you're talking about sustainability of refreshing that technology on a regular basis, and that is an ongoing cost item because 8-year-old laptops are pretty useless, right? So I think that that's also something that having another arm of development of funding is important.
I think the one thing that is beneficial about the Straight A Fund grant proposal is you really have to do your due diligence and show your sustainability, or else you get knocked out in phase 1. So, I think we've spent more time on sustainability than we have really on the content of the actual grant, just because that's so critical in phase 1. But I think you're absolutely right. If you put it in place, you have to sustain it. And if you put it in place and you don't sustain it, it'll be a train wreck.
And I'm sure that the community is going to be very supportive as well, right? I mean, I think most people don't quite realize we do such a good job with a lot of older technology, right? And I think the community can really get their mind around this and understand that these kinds of tools are really important to the kids' future, right? And we'd be better using them now as a regular part of education, not like we have a great computer lab that they can go to sometimes,
right,
but it's just like the natural way that they get work done. And I think it's going to end up significantly, changing curriculum in some ways that we don't imagine right now, right? That I think much more naturally integrates technology as a natural part of the education as opposed to a separate event, right? Because they'll always have it with them. They'll get to learn it, they'll get to know it, they'll get to use it just like it was, a ruler or a protractor, It's going to be something that's with them and is a useful tool that they'll benefit from enormously. So keep it up, and again, good idea about the sponsors as well. I'm sure we'll find ways to continue.
Yeah, and I think, go ahead,
No,
Jen.
go ahead.
Well, I think, one of the things that we've had conversations with some of our support organizations, mainly GEF, is, is there some role for a bigger district-wide project support, or support of a project that's district-wide? And I think they're open to that concept. So we have to look at every avenue. You know, we're looking at Martha Holden Jennings funding. We're looking at straight A. We look, you know, we'll approach anybody who has a grant application process, because that's our obligation to show the community that we're doing what we can to be as efficient as possible.
Well, and I'm thinking too of the piece about we don't have a good alumni relations piece, and that's another, I mean, looking for benefactors in those areas can be helpful.
And I think this is a natural one that kind of speaks to people, right? I mean, one of the challenges you have in fundraising is not having a goal, right? I think if you have a goal, a physical asset, a capital asset, a technology platform that you can communicate concisely, I think people will come out in big support.
I agree.
Right, so I think that's one of the challenges, is you just got to have that goal first. And so if there's a way that the community or the GEF or, you know, other businesses around, how come we can't be recruiting them as well? You know, there's got to be a way that we can tap into resources to support this.
I just had a question. As part of the grant, do you have to be very specific sort of about implementation and policy? Like the session I went to at OSBA, you know, what happens if somebody doesn't have internet at home? Or what if somebody doesn't want to be responsible for the device? I mean, are those the kinds of policies that you actually have to think about now?
Yes.
And include in the grant?
You don't have to include those in the grant.
But you're thinking about those things?
Yes.
Yeah, now and in implementation?
Yes, because right now, you know, with the bring your own technology device, we're pretty open as far as, you know, what do we expect from the students, and it's really their choice. But in this environment, you know, there are going to be expectations, just like there's an expectation you bring a pencil and paper. Now you can bring your laptop or your device charged. You know, we'll be looking at, you know, is there going to be an annual fee for that device, so that you don't get into people abusing devices and things like that. So there's quite a few policy implications from a handbook perspective that would be
That's where
critical.
that
Yeah.
would happen in the student
Yeah.
handbook. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's an alternate funding model as well in terms of fees. I'm not sure how that goes over and things
Yeah.
like that, but if you spread the costs of a device over multiple years, there might be a way there that the community can help support along those lines as well. It might not be very popular with everybody, but maybe there's a way to blend that with existing technology that they already have, or things along those lines. So don't stop because of those things. Bring it back to us and we'll
Yeah.
find a way to move it forward.
Yeah. Many of the one-to-one initiatives have a fee assessment in each year for the device from a warranty perspective or break fix.
We have to sign a contract, the kids do and the parents do, that has a list of stipulations about how the equipment will be treated, consequences if it's not, et cetera, and those have to be, it has to be every single year.
Yeah.
As one of those kinds of pieces.
Kind of like the acceptable use policy.
Yeah, a little personal story. I mean, we have our next tuition payment for Eric coming up, but this freshman year we'll pay $2,500 for a laptop, which seems like a lot for a laptop, but he never has any textbooks. He doesn't use any textbooks, and he never uses paper, right? And that's good for 4 years, right, with all of the software that's baked into it and things like that, and it's a super high-power engineering laptop and things like that, right? So it's a valuable investment that will last.
There's also research, though, that shows that there are really significant learning outcomes with the pen and paper, and I think it's important at least to consider, because again, I'm speaking my own as a parent in practice, I see, in theory, in our situation, it is supposed to be always optional for the student to choose pen and paper for whatever the assignment is. In practice, that is not the case, and there's a discrepancy there between kids' learning styles, et cetera, which teachers should be taking into account, but they don't always, because they're on fire about some new thing that they'd like to try. But the other piece is, I have not seen a reduction in the weight of my children's backpack at all. So that I'm very skeptical about yet. They're still carrying the binders. My son still has his calculus book, which stays at home, but he has to have one still, and he's got his history books and everything else, so
Yeah.
I haven't seen a big reduction in the weight issue.
I think it's also kind of important when you choose the technology itself. There's so many options and possibilities out there and things like that. And there might be some that give more flexibility, touchscreen kind of thing might have a cost implication, but maybe it introduces another mode of learning that's important in cases, right? In finding a
Yeah,
way
I mean,
to
they have
appropriately
everything
blend.
duplicated. That's part of like his calculus stuff is online as well as having the book, which sometimes is nice because if you're going on a trip and you don't have the hotspot on your phone to connect the iPad, then you can throw the book in the trunk. So there are some uses still for that outmoded
Well,
technology.
and right now, we've just completed a textbook replacement cycle for every subject. So we expect that those can last for a long time and be that resource if people need it. And to your point, last night, my daughter was sitting at the kitchen table listening to something and writing
Right, exactly.
everything out and organizing her notes. And I said, well, why don't you just do that in OneNote? She's like, I can't do the dual screen and really different. She's like, I have to write it out, and then I really get it. So kids will figure those strategies that work for them, and I think there's research to support what you're saying.
And
too.
it keeps being reconfirmed. The
Yeah.
research keeps being done over and over, and it keeps coming out the same way.
Yeah.
So as part of our professional development, do we provide how to do a balance of technology? Because technology is just a tool, right? It's not, it doesn't teach kids how to think, but it can actually take over the thinking for kids, I think. And so I sort of would think that in our, professional development or how we want, these devices to be used, there needs to be a balance because, technology changes all the time. So if we're teaching to a specific piece of technology and that goes, by the wayside, where have we left our students? So, I have to say that I've been a little skeptical about the one-to-one, to be completely honest. Although this, going to this session at OSBA with somebody having it in practice and showing there are a lot of benefits in terms of like differentiating in the classroom, feedback, you can get quicker feedback, more, sort of detailed kinds of feedback both ways from students to teachers and teachers to students. But, and so I was, pleasantly, I was happy to see somebody actually explain the pedagogical and educational benefits of one-to-one. But I still think that there is a balance because, they need to learn, they need to know how to think, not just do things.
Correct.
So.
Okay. Any other comments?
Any other comments?
Good comments.
All right, moving on. Okay. At this portion of the meeting, we would entertain public comments. If you'd like to address the board, please come to the podium.
We thought you were getting up to come this way. Have a good night.
Take care, good night, thanks for being here.
And state your name and address, and you can speak for up to 3 to 5 minutes. Nobody?
Anybody?
Nobody?
Bueller?
Moving right along.
Okay, board report. Oh, that's me. I guess just CTEC this evening. Just a couple of quick things happening at CTEC. There's a couple of dates for things coming up, but also just a couple of, nice reports of events happening. Every year CTEC holds a craft show to raise money for their student organizations, and that was this past weekend. Sadly, it keeps getting scheduled when I can't go, so I've never been. But they raised about $4,500 towards some of their student activities and organizations. There is an annual career fair that is scheduled for Tuesday, November 24th at Denison, and it's a county-wide event for all Licking County freshmen. And CTEC's CTEC employee Beth Bronker is the chief organizer of that event. Do we send our students, our freshmen go?
Yep,
Okay.
we go, and the
that's-
administration is there, I go over.
Yeah.
So if you're
I have a freshman
interested,
that-
come on over.
Yeah.
And walk around.
It's at Denison. Where is it? At the Mitchell?
Mitchell Center.
Mitchell Center?
Yep.
So that's on Tuesday, November 24th. The cosmetology students hold what they call a hair-a-thon. It's basically the salon is open from 8 to 2, and there's no appointments necessary, and you can walk in. So if you know anybody who needs a haircut.
I'm going for sure.
So you can walk right in, and, you know, there is a cost. It is a fundraiser for their student activities, and there's some proceeds support students in competition, to advance in competitions and things like that. So, but that's happening on Friday, if you want to go, 8 to 2. And then hands-on, our sophomore hands-on activity is scheduled for December 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So every sophomore has the opportunity to go and visit 2 programs at CTEC. I assume we're sending our sophomores. And then finally, we've had 2 of our students in their architecture and engineering design program be elected to serve at the regional Skills USA, as regional officers in the Skills USA organization, and that's like a big student organization for career tech students. But that's it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Action agenda?
Yes, 11.01 is a litany of board policy updates from the second reading.
So moved.
A second.
Second.
We went over those at the last board meeting, and nothing has changed.
So this is our second reading.
Yes, and approval.
And approval. Any questions? Take the roll, please.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Rantel?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Dr. Foreman?
Aye.
Thank you. 11.02 are leave of absences.
So moved.
Amy
I'll second
moved.
Amy's.
All right.
Amy, and I'll second.
Any discussion? I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I was like
Yeah.
looking through them. Any questions? No? Then take the roll, please.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Rantel?
Aye.
Dr. Foreman?
Aye.
Okay, the next item, 11.03, is the 2016 through 2017 school calendar.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
And just a little bit about that. Obviously, we did a little bit of a shift this year with our, the elimination of the early release. And that has gone very well from a staff perspective and a professional development perspective. We made a couple of little tweaks to the next year's calendar. Instead of 4 days at the beginning, we're going to do 3 days and move a day into September so that we have a little bit more break in between the professional development that we're offering, a little bit more cyclical. So we're, you know, continually challenged to find a balance from a calendar perspective. Personally, I'd love to go all year round and just create a little break here and there, but I know I'm not going to win that countywide issue, so.
My high school daughter asked if we could make every day late arrival. I told her we weren't going to win that issue either.
Exactly.
Even though the research supports her on that.
Yes.
Any other questions? Take the roll, please.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Rantel?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Foreman?
Aye.
Next item is 11.04, Granville Education Grant Recipients.
So moved.
Second, anybody?
Second.
And you can see the list. Mr. Miller shared those grants at the last board meeting. We're very excited about those.
And I'd like to also point out that the Music Boosters has been fantastic in cooperating with the GEF for a couple of years running, and it's really neat to see good collaboration like that between our organizations, because it really helps us leverage things. In this case, the Electric Strings Quartet Orchestra is going to be really cool to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think another group that will actually go out in the community quite often to do performances like Blue Steel and
Mhm.
Ace of Palace and Blue Notes
Mhm.
a couple of years as well.
Yeah.
It's great support.
Maybe we can get a presentation here.
There you go.
Yeah.
I think that's in
I'm
order. Yeah.
That'd
I'm
be
good with that.
awesome.
Yep. Any other questions or comments? Take the roll, please.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Rantel?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Dr. Foreman?
Aye.
I think we have a narcoleptic voter.
I'm sorry, you're just catching me at the wrong time in my
Yeah.
rhythm of yawns.
11.05 is an independent contractor agreement.
Have a motion?
Second?
This is related to a student with, or student services contract.
Okay. Any questions?
No.
Take the roll, please.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Thank you. 11.06, Glenn, this is where you go, woo! Systems administrator position.
So moved.
Second? Second.
All right, we are excited to have Harrison Thorpe join us for a one-year contract as a systems administrator. He actually came from CTEC, that he was part of an outsourced IT provider. And he had a compete clause or non-compete clause with them, and we had the ability to hire him away from that organization, which was fantastic. So we're excited to have him on board and help maintain all the assets that we have in the district currently, right, Glenn?
Absolutely.
All right.
Way.
Yeah.
Any questions?
No.
Take the roll, please.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Thank you. 11.07 is the TIF agreement that we discussed earlier.
So moved.
Second? Jeff.
And this is just to waive the 45 days.
It is the approval of the resolution to waive the 45-day reporting requirement and authorizing the TIF compensation agreement.
Any other questions?
No.
No? Take the roll, please.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye. And I
Mr.
didn't
Miller?
yawn.
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Next, we have 12.01A through C3.
Motion?
That wasn't my fault.
I'll second it. It was Amy. and
Thomas,
second.
Amy then Thomas.
Right.
And then Thomas.
Yeah, I noticed.
Yeah, we don't have the voting bar there, so we're having to pencil that in. Okay, I'd like to recognize the donations for archery, Aspire, the PTO, and then Jill Esch and the Licking County Foundation. All of those great donations. We appreciate all of that support to our organization. I'd like to highlight the fact that Corinne Kai is retiring at the end of this year. She is a social studies teacher at the high school, and we appreciate her service. This is also part of the process of getting retirements in prior to December 1, so that she doesn't necessarily have to go through the evaluation process this year. We are having Marvin Bright resign in our C3, but you'll also see in the supplemental C3 that he is being rehired. So I just wanted to give some context to that. They have 29 wrestlers out right now, which is the most that they've ever had. Currently, our volunteers are not allowed to supervise without a staff personnel there, a paid staff. So Marvin agreed to go to 95 and take the volunteer and give him 5% so he could be considered a paid paid employee, so that he could oversee activities and have equal status. I'd like to recognize that because that was very thoughtful. He knew that we couldn't necessarily add staff, and so if you see Marvin, give him a pat on the back for thinking about that. We appreciate that.
Is that true with all volunteer coaches as well? Volunteer coaches are not allowed to supervise children?
Yeah, we
without a
really
staff member?
don't want them alone with children. We want them in the presence of a staff member for, as much as possible. I know that it probably happens, but we don't encourage that.
Okay. But would a volunteer, because there are other coaches of other organizations and other groups and things like that that are volunteers, right? They would go through a process of, no?
No.
There are no other
They get,
volunteer
well,
coaches?
I mean, we get FBI and BCI checks on
Right.
our volunteers.
Okay.
But we don't require the permit pupil activity permit, sorry. And we don't require those things like we do of coaches. So this would have him paid as a paid employee, therefore cover him.
Okay.
And the other resignation I would call your attention to is Shelby Gall, who is our GMS Health Clinic nurse. Shelby has been fantastic for really moving the HeartSafe accreditation process, getting all of our teachers trained in CPR. She is moving, and I know Lisa's not happy about that at all, but you know, we appreciate her service to the community and to the schools.
She sits on the whole child committee too.
Yeah.
She's been great.
Yeah.
I have a quick question about donations. Are all donations from booster organizations to things that end up in the schools reflected in these monthly donations? Because it seems like, I don't know.
Not all, yeah, we had this whole go-around with Aspire because of this one grant, and the reason we're doing it is that we don't often put these on when it comes from Aspire or that, but in this case, it was a purchase that has already been made, and they are funding it kind of retroactively, and they're just donating the money to pay for a purchase that has already been made, and I felt because it was a donation of money in that manner that we should accept the.
Right. But normally because booster organizations purchase things that are donated effectively, they don't show up here. Right.
Often, when they're purchasing things and donating them, often we do not.
Mhm.
If you remember a couple of years back, the music boosters purchased the risers. We accepted that because it was a large donation.
As we did with the wrestling wall.
And the scoreboards. So we do kind of bigger things, but we don't necessarily, you know, recognize all the little things that they do on a regular basis.
I think it's nice to have a sort of awareness, and I think we kind of miss a lot of the things that our booster organizations do. And I'm not saying we need to account for every little thing that they buy and do. Right? It'd be nice to know a little bit more about, you know, what's the budget of the athletic boosters and the music boosters and Aspire, and where do those kind of come from and go to. And I'm not sure if there's another format for occasional reporting or some other mechanism to be able to like appreciate that and thank them and understand a little bit how that fits in the bigger picture. But it's great to see all these donations that would often come in for so many places.
I can work on that.
That'd be great.
Any other questions
Be
or comments?
prepared for a laundry list.
Well, I mean, yeah, it doesn't have to be the full accounting,
Yeah.
but like, again, it'd be
Yeah.
good to know once a year how much
Yeah.
the boosters do and, you know, where it goes and so forth.
Okay.
Anything else? Take the roll, please.
Ms. Deeds.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Dr. Rentel.
Aye.
Mr. Janice.
Aye.
Dr. Corman.
Aye.
Like I remember everything.
Yeah.
Tough,
I was
isn't
ready to
it?
jump in.
Okay, finances?
Okay, first is the monthly financial report.
Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
If we take a look, you'll see it's a little bit different format than in the prior months. We as a business are still working on the most effective way of bringing across information without bringing across too much information. October, if we take a look, things are still pretty much on track. Our revenues, the percent we collected this year on page 5. For some reason, I have only the odd pages in it. I brought my own copy of the report, and only the odd pages in it.
Here, I have it.
You know, all the pages.
Yeah, all the pages.
Well, that's good.
The board one, leave it to Janelle.
Luckily, you two are a
She's got it.
team.
She did it right.
Okay, let's start over. Let's start on page 4. Page 4, just an update of the 5-year forecast. This is going to be going through a little bit more update over the next couple of weeks as we get our valuations for 2015. The main differences we have here, just minor. Revenues in 17-18 are a little bit lower. than were forecast in the October, and that's primarily because of a change in the forecast for state aid because of a misinterpretation. The expenditures a little bit higher. This is primarily for one of the purchase service contracts that we had to undertake in student services that we're not anticipating at the time of the forecast. Other than that, has not changed much since then. I'll probably do a little bit more of an in-depth review of the forecast next month. We have a meeting next Tuesday with the county auditor staff to get our 2015 valuations. So once I have those, I can really calibrate the property tax forecast for this year and next year a lot better. Probably won't change a lot, but at least we'll have some actual numbers to work from. Now we can move on to page 5. Our revenues to date, you see we're percentage-wise, we're really right on track with where we've been the last 2 years from a percentage standpoint. Same with the expenditures. If you look at our expenditures on page 6, you know, we've spent 33.5% of our anticipated amount of money for the year, which is good because we're 33% of the way through the fiscal year. So we expect that to be in line, and it is. Overall, taking a look at our revenues, kind of compared to an overall annual basis, revenues are about 0.2% below estimate. Again, I mean, if everything the rest of the year came in on estimate, we finished 2% below, and that is almost exclusively because of the delinquency at the Paramount Building, which has now been paid, and we'll be getting that money in February or March, so that should balance that out by the time we get to the end of the year. On the expenditure side, expenditures are about 1.6% ahead of forecast. Again, the biggest chunk of that is in purchase services, as we've had several discussions over the last few months about some of the challenges that we're facing in some of the contractual work that we're having to do to meet student needs. Cash balances still look good. We are still en route to be at or above the cash balance guideline through the end of fiscal year 2017. And on the last page, for the last month, we are going to look like we're really, really, really flush in money with $40 million. The $27 million will be going out here in about 2 weeks. We will need to make the payments to refund the bonds, or to call the bonds that we have already refunded. And so that $27.6 million will be exiting the book. So at the next month at the report, it will be a much more normal fund balance at that point for where we would normally expect to be.
Hopefully the state's not picking this up and telling us that we have a lot more money than you.
No, the worry would have been, the big worry would have been if it was June 30th and we didn't have to make the payment until August 1st or something.
Right.
Then we had some explaining to do.
Right.
$40 million, but no, they generally don't look at the interim balances as we go through the year. And we can, it's clear.
No, I know it is. I was just joking.
But yeah, it looks bad. You have when you have a fund balance that's, 50% higher than your annual budget.
Yeah.
It looks a little suspicious, when people take a look at it.
No problem.
Districts.
Yeah.
I don't know if you like the new form.
I do, actually.
It's a little bit less
Concise.
detailed, but we think we've highlighted things that bring out the overall condition of the budget and spending and revenues. I think it's a little bit clearer than what we've done in the past.
Any questions? No. Nope. Take the roll, please.
Okay. Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Rotel?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Thank you. Item 14, 2016 agreement with the Rich and Gillis Law Group.
So moved.
Second.
We have used Rich and Gillis since before I was here. What we use them for is they track real estate transactions in the county for us, and they make recommendations on whether we should file any complaints with the Board of Revision, overvaluations, or counter complaints if somebody has filed against us and against their valuation. We're just paying them for the work they do. They will have a little more work coming up. One of our BOR cases from last year, which the plaintiffs did not get any relief, they have appealed to the Board of Tax Appeals, which is within their right to do so. That will be coming up. I think we have a hearing date of May 31st with the Board of Tax Appeals on that property. So this is just going to renew. They will continue to do the monitoring for us. They do not file anything without our approval. Is basically they will send a list of what they recommend that we challenge, or we recommend they counter challenge. Jeff and I review it. I send you a list of them, and we tell them whether to go forward with that process or not.
And this is on an as-needed, not a retainer basis, so if there's a change in legislation that changes the amount of work that might be required in challenging these?
It's basically, it's an as-needed basis.
Okay.
Primarily, they are reviewing those things. I will be attempting to prevent this cost from going down. Wednesday, I will be, I sent everybody a copy of my testimony on Senate Bill 85 this morning. I will be going down testifying on Senate Bill 85, which would actually preclude school districts from filing complaints on valuations based on sales. It is a very ill-advised piece of legislation, and so I will be going down Wednesday to the Senate Ways and Means Committee to testify in opposition to the bill, which is likely not to get much further than this hearing. We've seen this is the third General Assembly now, I believe. We have seen this bill from Senator Coley. I don't think it will have any more success this time than it has had the prior two times, but take
A for effort.
Yep, A for effort, but not being willing to take the risk. I will go down and put my 2 cents worth in Wednesday morning in opposition to it.
Any questions about the approval of Rich and Gillis?
No.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Thank you. Resolution 15 is an authorization of transfer of funds for GHS.
So moved.
Second.
I have been going through over the last few weeks trying to clean out some old accounts that are for the most part dormant at this point. And you will actually see there will be this and two more resolutions related to that. This one, we have fund balances from the classes of 2010, 12, and 13. Of course, all have left the school district, as well as what there at one point, again, prior to my being here, there was a high school store that no longer is operational. Those four funds have about $3,500 in them. Mr. Durst made an attempt last spring to contact the officers of the classes of 2010, 12, and 13 through their parents, asking them to respond and to ask what they would like to do with the money. He also made the request. We had 2011 also. 2011 was the only one that actually responded to him. And you'll see there is no 2011 balance because they said what to do with it. Rather than just keeping this money sitting there forever, I talked with Mr. Durst, and with your approval, what we've decided to do is take those four balances, move them into a fund for the GES Student Council with the stipulation that the council spend this on something that will have a long-lasting value to Granville High School. In other words, no big pizza party with the money, but to leave it to the council's discretion as to how to spend the money, kind of in keeping with the way that the classes probably would have spent that had they spent it.
Any questions? Take the roll, please.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Cornman?
Aye.
Thank you. 16 is a resolution for a transfer of funds for reimbursement.
So moved.
Second.
This actually came out of the work I was doing before. As we were looking at these, we found a discrepancy in one fund, and what we realized is that through a coding error last spring, out of one of the Licking County Foundation funds, one expenditure was accidentally coded to Mrs. Ormond's principal's account rather than to the grant fund. Since it is a prior year that is already closed, and it is in a different fund, it requires council or the board resolution for me to be able to transfer the money from the grant account back to Mrs. Ormond's fund to reimburse her for the $341 that was coded erroneously.
Any questions?
No.
Take the roll, please.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds? Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Dr. Cornman?
Aye.
Thank you. 17, which is a approval for a supplemental appropriation.
So moved.
Second.
Press the name.
Again, this is from the effort of cleaning up accounts. We have these two accounts that are related to grants, or somehow related to the high school that works program from 2008 and 2009, which, according to Mr. Bernath, were given to us in response for him speaking at a high school that works conference. But anyway, it's close to.
Subject to review.
Basically, it's about $3,600. It has been sitting on our accounts now for 6 or 7 years. What we are proposing to do, first of all, it's in Fund 019. It is the only money in Fund 019 that we have. I did not ask for an appropriation in Fund 019, so that's why it's a supplemental appropriation. Last month, Mrs. Fender, the coach in the elementary school at her own expense, went to a Teachers College Reading and Writing program at Columbia University for professional development to help her with, the work that she does in the elementary school. We are proposing to take the money from this old fund and reimburse, probably it works out to about 90% of the expenses that she incurred on her own to take on the training.
Wait, that was the discussion, wasn't it? I am just losing it here. Any questions? Nope. Take the roll, please.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Cornman?
Aye.
Thank you.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
You didn't even give me a chance to say, Amy, go for it.
I'm trying to make 8:30.
All right, so Amy moved, second.
Katie.
Katie?
The yawner.
Yeah.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Cornman?
Aye.